Okay, well, as I said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Sarah Souza, and I am the Assistant Director for International Admissions here at Duquesne University. We have a beautiful morning full of snow today. So we're right in the middle of our winter here. It's a beautiful time of year for those students who don't have winter. But we are very excited today to welcome our guest, our Executive Director of this department, Center for Global Engagement, Dr. Joseph DeCrosta. So thank you, Dr. DeCrosta, for joining us today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me to do this presentation. Welcome, everybody from around the world. We're really glad to have you here from snowy Pittsburgh. We haven't had a ton of snow this winter, but we've had some this morning, and it's quite beautiful, but it's a bit cold. So I am going to talk to you all today about how to submit a strong application to our university. And of course, all of these principles would apply to most universities in the United States as you look for the right place for yourself. We certainly hope that Duquesne is a good place for you, and we would welcome you to, ask us questions and engage in the application process the best that you can to see if this is the right place for you. We want everyone to choose the place where they feel most comfortable. So this is just part of that process. So I'm going to get started to talk to you about the application process. But before we do so, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about where we're located. Some of you might be familiar with our city through a famous American football team called the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's how we're probably best known throughout the world. Also, because this city was one of the most powerful cities in the world in early 20th century history, because we were a steel producer for most of the world. So you could see that if you can all mute your microphones. We are located in the state of Pennsylvania, which, as you can see, is not far from New York or Washington, D.C. We are on the western side of the state, which is quite beautiful, mountainous and green during many times of the year. And as you can see, we're located almost equidistant between New York and Chicago. It's about a 6-hour drive to each city from here, and of course, a short flight. It's only about a 3.5 to 4-hour drive to Washington, D.C. And Philadelphia is across the state at about 5 hours in the car. So we're centrally located to many major cities as well as our own city. This is pretty much considered the Atlantic seaboard. So we are located close to what we consider the Midwest region of the United States. So culturally, it's a very interesting place, has the qualities of both the East Coast and the Midwest. This is just, we'd like to share with you some of our student experiences. This is Aryan, who's actually from Iran. He's a biochemistry undergraduate major. And you could read his quote here, but you could see he's really made Duquesne his home, and has become a very active student. And he's been a very fine student in the sciences as well. But he says, throughout my life, science has been my passion. By studying at Duquesne and further education, I look forward to contribute to science, especially medicinal chemistry. So what's the application process itself? What are the most important things to know? Of course, you want to research your program, the major that you would like to study. A lot of people have ideas about what certain majors might mean, but until you really start digging deeper into those majors, you might not understand exactly what it entails. Do they require a lot of understanding of math, for example, of the English language and strong writing skills? Is there a lot more logical thinking involved? Is it more process oriented? So you want to think about those kinds of things as you research a major, which you already have in mind. Keep in mind that a lot of students come into the university with one major and will often graduate with another or add to the first major that they chose. That's the way the American system is set up. if you choose a major from the beginning, it doesn't mean you must stick with that your whole college career. Of course, it can affect your timing and your cost, but the system is flexible in a way that allows you to change your mind if something doesn't quite work for you. Of course, research your scholarship opportunities. As international students, you have different access to scholarship opportunities. You don't necessarily have access to the same ones that American students have. So see what's available at the university where you're applying, but also see what's available, in your home country, in the United States for students from your home country, for students with your major. Just do a very deep internet search and you may be surprised at what you find that could be able to help you. Some of your home countries may offer special loan programs for international students to come to the States. So there's just a host of opportunities for you. Talk to your current teachers and advisors at home about writing you recommendation letters. Recommendation letters are a very important part of the application process because as people who read your applications, we can see your grades, we can see how well you've done, but we don't know you. So it's good to get to know you in a very small way through recommendation letters and through your personal statements, which is the next item here, which is when you prepare your personal statement, talk about yourself, tell us who you are in a well-written way. And if English is not your first language, have somebody help you. This is not a test. This is not an English test to make sure, you're good at English. It's just a way to get to know you. If you feel more comfortable writing in your native language and then have somebody translate that for you, we're fine with that. We just want to see some, personal ideas and original ideas. We don't want to see you pulling things off the internet, telling us things about Duquesne that we wrote ourselves. So, just make sure you make it original and interesting and unique. If your program requires certain standardized tests like the SAT or the GMAT or the GRE, then prepare for those tests. Get ready for those tests and see how well you can do. Keep in mind, however, that this landscape is changing and not all programs require these tests. Most of our undergraduate programs at Duquesne are test optional, not all, but most. And many graduate programs will not require the GRE or GMAT, but you have to, be prepared. If they're asking for it, then you must do it. Okay, there won't necessarily be an email waiver, or a waiver for those tests. And then once we have all your materials, if you're an undergraduate student, you'll be evaluated by our office and we'll get back to you relatively quickly once everything is complete. And we will respond to you by email. So keep that open. Also, you will have access to the portal for our application system that has all of the data about your acceptance in there, including your acceptance letter. If you're a graduate student, departments vary in terms of how long they take to assess an application. So it could be very quickly, it could be a few more weeks. It really depends on that department. If you're getting concerned and you haven't heard from that department, let us know so then we can check into that for you if need be. This is our web address for our application. It's easy to remember. It's apply.duq.edu/apply. So if you go to this application link, I'll do this very quickly. It brings you to our internet page where you can start your application. And if you haven't before, if you've been here before, you can simply log in. If you haven't, you can create an account to start the new application. Okay. Okay. So the materials that we need, which are related to the things that I just told you, are obviously the online application, which collects all of your personal data, an official transcript. So an official stamped transcript, a grade report from your schools, whether it just be your secondary school or your secondary school and your university. those can be scanned into the online application system, and we consider that official. But keep in mind that we can tell when a grade report and official transcript is not authentic, even online. Okay, we are trained to read those things. Any of the scores for standardized tests that you may have, depending on whether it's required. And then an English language proficiency test. Many of the graduate programs will require this. At the undergraduate level, it is not required, but it is helpful in order for us to tell you where you may fall and have to take English or not when you arrive at the university. We accept the TOEFL, the IELTS, and Duolingo. Duolingo can actually be taken at home. There are certain tools in place to make sure that you are taking the test in an ethical way. Of course, the recommendation letters that we mentioned, your personal statement, and an application fee if needed. Most programs nowadays are not requiring an application fee, but it depends. If they're using certain national systems, they may require you to pay an application fee as well. We also accept what's called the Common App or the Common Application. Over 900 colleges and universities in the United States will accept this for undergraduate applications. So this is a really nice tool because if you plan on applying to 5 different universities that accept the Common Application, you're really putting your information once and then have to fill out a few things per university, and you're pretty much done. Everything gets submitted to that university. My son, who is of university age, application age right now, has used the Common App, and it is quite an easy system to use. And for the undergrads, we don't require an application fee. So what does it mean when we are asking for official copies of your documents? It basically means that those documents can't come directly from you, okay? Well, as I said before, we'll accept those scanned copies with stamps and signatures, but usually you're going to send a request to your school to upload those for us, okay? Recommendation should be done in the same way. You send a request to your recommender, and they will upload that request to your system. And we have a code for test results. So if you are going to submit SATs or GREs, we have a university code, or you can just do a search for Duquesne University so that those scores are sent to us electronically. I believe Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our code is 2196. So let's talk a little bit more about recommendations in detail. As I said before, they're very helpful for us as application readers. It's best, obviously, if someone who knows you well can speak about your strengths and interests. We also like to talk about, especially if we see a little bit of a change in your performance in school. Why? Why did that happen? How did you improve? How did you overcome that obstacle? And then how, you've been involved in your community, in your school. Have you been a leader? Have you been a participant in certain activities? It's a very common thing in the United States to talk about this. And we know internationally that it's not necessarily a common thing for students to do these types of activities, depending on where you're from and what type of school you went to. But, have them talk about anything that you've been involved with. It's very helpful. Sometimes a recommendation carries more weight if the teacher's subject area is relevant to your major. So in other words, if you want to be a computer science major, have somebody who may have taught you something in the computer sciences write you a recommendation, or math, for example. If you're going into business, have a math teacher, or if you took any business classes, write a recommendation in the area, because it really helps us connect you to that major in different ways. Please don't duplicate the same recommendation letters if you're submitting more than one, depending on your program. Don't duplicate it with different signatories. We see this very often, and it doesn't leave a good impression, believe me. It shows that the student really didn't invest any time in the application process. They didn't really understand how it works. So if you need 2, 3 recommendation letters, make sure they all look different. They can speak to the same things, but it needs to look like, that someone else wrote them and really took the time to recommend you. We've rejected students because of this, especially. So, just keep that in mind as you move through this process. Let's talk about the personal statement. Just to go off the statement that I just made about recommendations, don't pull things off of the internet, copy information from somebody else. We can catch up on that, and it doesn't serve you any good because we're not getting to know you in any way. This is an opportunity to set yourself apart, to tell us about yourself. Why should you be accepted? Why is this important to you? What have you done that might pull yourself apart from your colleagues in some way? All right. And like we said, don't write the same essay for every single university and then just switch the names in the essay. I can't tell you how many times Sarah, Mike, and I have seen people, forget to change the name of the university. And instead of saying, I'm very interested in Duquesne University, it says, I'm very interested in Drexel University. And we're like, well, how serious is this person about Duquesne and about the process in general? So just keep that in mind, okay? Do not include text that is copied information from our website, as I mentioned before. We already know what our university is about, and we've written most of that text, so we know exactly where you're getting it from. Tell us why you've chosen Duquesne. So if Duquesne is a comprehensive liberal arts university, that's great. We know that. Why are you choosing a comprehensive liberal arts university? Or why are you choosing to study business in a city like Pittsburgh? So make that unique, tell us more about those interests. So what we like to see in the essay, is about a page to 2 pages. So it's nothing major. Sometimes it's harder to accomplish your goal in that way. But because it's a shorter essay. But as I said before, what's unique about you? Why have you chosen this program of study? How will Duquesne help you in your future goals, academic, personal, professional? And what are your reasons and motivation for attending these programs? So again, a little more about you and why you're on this path. In terms of graduate essays, they get a little more specific and they'll have very specific prompts and questions for you to answer. For example, the graduate business essay asks you these certain questions for these programs in information management and supply chain management. They want sort of a summary of your academic and professional background, if you have one. What are your future goals may be? And then answer sort of what you think it means to be a business of difference making program. So our school says that they're in the business of difference making. Well, what does that mean to you and how would you contribute to that? So just keep in mind for graduate essays, you're starting to focus in on more specific academic interests, more specific programs. And so they're going to ask you more specific questions. And as I said, just to go back to these essays for a moment, it's okay to, write a draft, have somebody look at it, have someone help you and really produce something of quality because that really makes an impression on your application readers. So for undergraduates, obviously we talked about the application. We need your transcripts. Generally, we like to see what's equivalent to what we consider a 2.5 GPA. 2.5 GPA is a strong, what we in the United States would call a B average, okay? English proficiency for direct entry, we need to see, the TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. These are the minimum scores that we need for direct entry. So we need a 70 on the TOEFL, a 6.0 on the IELTS, 95 on the Duolingo, and on the PTE, which is the Pearson test of English, we need to see a 48. Or we need to see why you're asking for a waiver for those tests. In other words, Do you come from an English-speaking country? Have you been educated in English for the last 12, 13 years, and are you fluent? And all of these questions that we will ask will help us determine whether or not you really need to take the test for direct entry. And then if necessary, if you choose to take the SAT, we generally like to see, on each of the sections about a 540 or more, especially on sort of the writing and qualitative thinking areas. Math will vary depending on what program you want to enter. But as we mentioned before, SATs are not required for international undergraduate students, and most programs are what we call test optional now, meaning you can or cannot send in a test if you'd like. I will say, however, that although they don't affect your admission, they may affect how much scholarship you might be eligible for, to help us understand, where you fall in that range. And then the letter of recommendation, we only ask for one at the undergraduate level and your personal statement essay. The postgraduate, or what we just call graduate in this country, many similar things. They will ask for a resume or a curriculum vitae if you've been working in the professional world. And we need to see your bachelor's degree transcripts and any other degree that you may have, and have at least a 3.0, which is a bit higher, obviously, than the 2.5. The GRE or GMAT, if required, and as I said before, our code is 2196, I was correct. And most programs will ask for an English proficiency test. And again, we will accept all of these different tests. Some programs may ask for, say, a bit higher than an 80 on the TOEFL. For example, I believe our business and law programs are looking for a 90. Okay, so just make sure you pay attention to that when researching the program. Or the waiver, as I mentioned before. Most graduate programs will ask for 3 letters of recommendation. So that's what we were talking about before, not having duplicate letters and having 3 solid recommenders send letters to us, and your personal statement, which would probably be more specific than an undergraduate application. So what is the waiver? What does it mean to have a waiver? We will consider a waiver if we are able to recognize that you've done 4 years of high school in English at an accredited institution for a high school diploma. What does that mean? Well, most of the time that means that you've gone to high school in the United States or say the UK or Australia, and that those schools have been recognized by an accreditation body or the local national governments, okay? And that you've received a diploma from those places. If you've done 1 or 2 years at an institution like that, it's usually not qualified for a waiver. But again, we will look at your situation. We'll also look, if you're coming into a graduate program, that you've done at least 4 years of a bachelor's degree in English from an accredited bachelor's institution, or that you've done 2 years of graduate coursework taught in English for a master's degree. So as you can see, we want to see that you've done at least sort of a full course of study in English, taught completely in English. Some students will ask, well, English is one of my native languages. We can look at that too, but you have to show us how it is. A lot of people come from places where English is commonly spoken, but is not the native language and it is not spoken at home or in school, and they just might have a few classes in English. That doesn't qualify for a waiver, okay? And then you have to provide a rationale using one of these recognition points here to show us why you want to be considered, okay? How can you prove that English was a medium of instruction? If you have to have, say, an administrator or a teacher write something that says that English was taught in all subjects for all 4 years, then that would be very helpful as well. And is it indicated on your grade report, okay? Or is it on the website for the school that you attended? So all that information helps us make a determination on the waiver and whether or not you would need to take an English proficiency test. So let's talk about what you've all been thinking about. What are the possibilities for funding at Duquesne? And what's the difference between what we call a scholarship and a fellowship? Scholarships are usually based on different criteria like financial need, if we can determine it. Your grades, how well you've done in school, how well you've been involved in the community, what your major of interest may be. Is it more common? Is it more unique than most of our international students? And where you may come from. For example, if you're a Nigerian student who comes from Lagos, and we haven't had many applications from Abuja, then, that might give the student a little more weight, but, it's not just based on that. So these are really based on performance, how well you've done, and what your demographic is. Fellowships, on the other hand, are given to students for the purpose of professional or career development. Okay, so that would be more in your specific field of study, to help you conduct research or to help you get involved in, say, a community-based initiative. These are mostly done at the graduate level. So they're like scholarships, but they're often done in return for some kind of work, or in a department or research with a professor, or work in the local community. Okay, and that will often cover so many credits, the number of hours that you're studying in that program. So scholarships are given, they're both given upon admission. Mostly scholarships are only given upon admission, and fellowships sometimes are given once students are here. So, and also when they apply to the university. So that's the basic concept. We have both of these at Duquesne. We try to award scholarships to as many people as possible based on their applications, because we know that a U.S. University education can be very costly, and especially for students who are coming from different currencies and different economic situations. So we're trying to help people make this a reality through scholarships and fellowships.
I just wanted to point one thing out to some of our graduate students, just to hit home. I get a lot of questions from graduate students about scholarships. So for the graduate programs, most programs with any type of funding are going to be required, have different requirements for the scholarship than for the application. So you may have the admission requirements for a graduate program, but you may not have the requirements for a scholarship or fellowship. So that's something to look at specifically as well. So I know, for example, many of the scholarship or fellowship opportunities for graduate students require the GRE or GMAT. So that is something to specifically look for or ask us. We'll have our email at the end. I'll put it in the chat, but I just want to put that in there because we get a lot of questions about scholarships.
Yeah, good point, Sarah. Yeah. So, obviously they're going to ask you for a little more information if they're going to give you some money. So, you just have to be ready for that. So our application deadlines, there's a few different things to consider. Most of our programs are based on what we call rolling admission. They roll throughout the year. So when you're ready to apply, usually within 2-3 weeks at the most, you will have a decision, so you can start planning. We also have what's called early decision. To be honest, most of our international students won't engage in early decision. And it means that you're usually applying, by November, so we can get an answer to you out by December. And it usually means what's called it's a binding decision. So if you choose that particular way to be admitted, we ask you to choose Duquesne once you are. There's also early acceptance, which will allow you to apply, in the fall as well. But you will know by January or February, if you're in. And some programs at the university, very few, but some, will have a set deadline. So that means that if you want to get into, say, physical therapy, for example, they may ask the application to be in by December 1st, so they can look at everybody at the same time, make their decisions, and then get out those answers by early spring, January, February time. So these are the different definitions. At Duquesne, we're mostly not working with early decision and early acceptance. I mean, that is an option, but we're mostly working on rolling admissions or set deadlines. So we will admit people up until, the summer as late as we can if someone is interested. We ask you not to wait till the last minute because it really does help us make decisions. You may be eligible for more scholarship funding if you apply earlier. So these are all things to consider if you are thinking about applying to the university. But that's what rolling and set deadline would mean. So even though we're rolling, we recommend that you have certain deadlines in mind, which would help you not only get a decision in a relatively quick manner, but help you prepare for the immigration portion of the application process. So if you wish to come for the summer term, it's more uncommon to start in the summer, but you're certainly welcome to. We ask that you have things in by April 1st. So we'll make decisions on a rolling basis up until then. We will often accept applications after that, but you're getting a little close to trying to process application documents, or excuse me, immigration documents in order to get here on time. So these are our guidelines. I wouldn't necessarily call them deadlines. They're more like guidelines, but they do help get you here in a timely manner. For the fall semester, for most programs, we request by June 15th. That means that you have plenty of time to be prepared and get here in time for fall orientation, which is our largest intake and our most important orientation, I would say. For this, we do accept people to start in the spring semester, which is really our winter semester here in the United States, or starts in January after the Christian holidays. And so by November 15th is very helpful in order to get you settled for the January start. Keep in mind that in the United States, the holiday season kind of starts, early to mid-December, and things start shutting down. So we want to make sure that you have plenty of time to get those things processed if you need to. There are very specific deadlines for fall intakes for biomedical engineering, occupational therapy, pharmacy, physical therapy, and physician assistant studies. These are all in the health sciences. That is because they have limited spots in most of their programs and need to make decisions. Now, as I said before, we'll do mostly on a rolling basis, but we'll try to get you to adhere to these certain set deadlines once we reach those, to give you plenty of time for immigration documents. So that is the end of my presentation. We'd like to take this time now to talk to you about any specific questions you may have. You can put those in the chat if it's easier for you, or you can ask us if you want to unmute your microphone. Sarah will call on you. If you want to raise your hand, the electronic hand in Zoom, or the physical hand on your body, and we will call on you to answer any questions. I hope this was helpful. It's very basic information, but it's really important information. And as I said, this will apply to many universities unless they have very specific requests. And this is what we ask for at Duquesne.
We do have a lot of questions that are coming in the chat. I was busy typing while you were finishing up, but one question that I didn't type the answer to yet is, which is the January start date? So we usually start, it's different every year. This year it was January 5th. So it's typically in the middle of January, though, I would say. So that January start date is passed for spring. So that is what we're referring to as the spring start, is the January start. That might be a little confusing.
And I see here there was a question about, is there a January start for the MBA? Yes, the business school will accept applications for the spring semester, but it depends on the program. Certain programs will only let you, like some will start in the summer, for example, because of the timeline. Some programs are, say, 1 calendar year long, some are 2. So you just want to keep that in mind. But some of our MBA programs will allow a January start.
Yeah, so for those business school programs, Dr. DeCrosta is correct. They just vary. So reach out to us at Intel Admissions. I'll put the email in the chat. We can connect you with the business school, or if you're already connected with the business school, you can talk to them. And typically our fall start is not in September, it's in August. So usually the start date on your I-20 is going to be around August 10th, and our start of classes is around the 20th of August. So that means that you could come in, and we do require students to attend the orientation at that midpoint in August, so you can plan.
I see.
So, yeah.
Sorry, Sarah. I just see someone's asking if they want to start in January 24. As she said, that is a spring start. So you would select spring 24.
And we have a lot of questions about fee waivers, and I have good news. So most of our programs don't have an application fee. So right now, the only application fee that is being collected is through actually the CAS application for the business school, and that's for graduate students only. So someone's asking about a fee waiver for PhD. There is no fee, so you don't have to worry. It's just for that business school, for graduate business application students, and we aren't actually collecting it. It is the CAS application itself. So when will we start getting decisions? I applied in December.
I guess the first answer would be, is your application complete? If it's not complete, a lot of times we get these questions and someone may not have sent in something on your behalf, like a recommendation or your transcript from the school. You may not have submitted the personal essay. So I would recommend that you go into your portal and make sure it is complete. If it is, then feel free to email us at INTL, like international, INTL admissions @duq.edu. Sarah just put it in the chat. And if it's not, we'll check into that and see what might be delaying that. As you can imagine, we use electronic systems for these processes, and sometimes there might be a little glitch. So it's good to call it to our attention. But most of the time, the case is that the application isn't complete and we can't evaluate it yet.
Exactly. And depending on if it's a graduate program, it could also be that they have a deadline. So some graduate programs have a deadline and they collect all the applications and review them at once. Graduate, just for you all that are applying to graduate, it's a little difficult to say one thing for every school because they're all different. So sorry, but that email we put in the chat, do send your personal questions there. Like for those of you asking about your personal application, we're happy to give you an update. Just send an email and say, can I please have an update on my application if I'm missing anything, or where my application stands. So a question about the unofficial transcript. So that depends, right, Dr. DeCrosta?
Yeah, so what I would say is, why do you want us to make a decision on that unofficial transcript? Are you having a hard time getting it? I see Nomonde, for example, is saying the same thing. They're struggling to get an official transcript from their school. If that is delaying your process, what I would say is submit what you can as an unofficial. If it has stamps and so forth, we will look into that. And we can probably admit you conditionally based on the fact that we're waiting for an official transcript. But if you want to see if you're admissible and you need an answer, you certainly can submit that. But keep in mind that it's really not finalized until we have the official to make sure everything is, as we say, official.
Right.
So.
And for if you are a graduate student in this situation, the unofficial can, you can upload it, but we still require the transcript evaluation, which I just see someone read my mind and touched on that as a question. So the unofficial you can upload for undergraduate, but for graduate, we're still going to need that transcript evaluation to complete your application. So,
Namonde, could you tell us why you think you're having a hard time getting a transcript from your school? I'm just curious what kind of experience you're having.
And so can Wes send my transcript to you as official transcripts from my undergraduate university or SLO? Yes, we actually prefer Wes. So Wes sends it to us. That will serve as your transcript. Essentially, for the graduate students sending the transcript evaluation, if we have the transcript evaluation from Wes, for example, we don't need anything from your school. That will be the official document. And we do need the course by course evaluation.
So Namanda just answered, and this is interesting. You say that you're a transfer student and you do have your official one with the school stamp, but they are saying that you need to send it yourself and they can't send it to multiple schools. So you're applying, yeah, of course you're applying to multiple schools. Is this a US institution?
And let us know if you're applying to undergraduate or graduate.
Or graduate, yeah. And the other thing I just noticed, let me just see what just this is a good question. Tosine just asked, does Duquesne offer grant out-of-state waivers to international students? Duquesne is a private institution, not a state institution. So like a national institution, or what you would call them at home. So we don't have a difference in tuition between out of state and in-state students. Everyone is charged the same tuition. So that's where you can get a benefit with that, where there's a big difference is the amount of scholarship that you can often get from a private institution versus a state institution. Many state institutions don't offer very large scholarships because the tuition tends to be a little lower, but many private institutions will offer larger scholarships that can often bring the tuition lower than a state institution. So it really just depends. Some state institutions will have a very large international student scholarship programs, and others will hardly have anything. Our institution pretty much looks at every international student for scholarship.
I see another question about the transcript evaluation. So the student is asking, if you're from an English-speaking country, do you need the transcript evaluation? So the answer is still yes. If it's a non-US school, university that you attended, you'll need the transcript evaluation. So for example, I attended my graduate program in another country, and even though I'm American, I still need the transcript evaluation. So it's not, if it's in a foreign language, of course, it is translated in English and that helps us. But there's other reasons that we need the transcript evaluation other than the English itself. And I see that Namande is a transfer student, and so he's going to be undergraduate. And so I think you can send what you have to Intel Admissions and just explain again the situation in the email. Likely I will handle it, and we'll let you know. We'll look at that, and I'll guide you on anything else that you need to do.
Sarah, just to be clear on that, the student can upload an unofficial transcript to the portal, but not an official, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So it'll give you the option to upload a transcript copy, or sometimes students upload it as supplemental materials. So just let me know when you do that so I can change it over. I'll look at it, and if it's acceptable, I'll move it over to whether it's your accepted transcript for evaluation, or let you know whether or not we need something else.
And usually if you're having a hard time getting it from your schools, because like you said, they're saying in South Africa, they're not going to send it to multiple schools, so you be responsible for that. We understand that, but you can upload that as an official to the portal, so you can send it to that email address and we will try to take care of it and be in contact with you if it gets complicated.
Couple things just to clear up quickly. So anyone with questions about transcripts, you could just email Intel Admissions, and I will look at your transcripts and let you know what you need to do. So any questions about that, just email us. For the question about the application waiver for MBA, there is no waiver for the application fee for the MBA. Unfortunately, we aren't actually collecting that fee. That's the service of the application aggregate that's actually collecting the fee.
And I see like some Samuel here is saying most Nigerian universities, it's really hard to get transcripts. We do understand that. So as you said, follow the process that we just mentioned. And then if, we absolutely need something more official, we will let you know. But we try to be flexible because we know each country's system is different and can be kind of uncooperative at times.
Right. And for those waiting on the GRE waivers, you can email us at Intel Admissions and ask what is going on with your waiver. We're happy to connect with the department and check into that and let you know. So again, I'm going to put the email in here. And really, for a lot of these questions, I need to look at your application and look at the materials. So not that we don't want to answer them here, it's just that for the personal, really specific ones, we just need to take a look.
Yeah, it's very individual in a lot of cases, you know.
Right.
So we just want to be able to accommodate and not look at you as just another application.
Correct.
This was a great group today. You had a lot of good questions. We hope that this info session was helpful as you go through this stressful yet exciting process. But, you know, this is a big decision that you're going to make in your life, and we want to help you make that easier. So we understand that. We know what it feels like to live in a different place and really move your life. But this is a big deal and it's expensive. And so we want to, you know, try to make it as affordable as possible for you and as comfortable as possible for you. And so we're here to help you. We have a staff dedicated to doing all of this and to get you here. So we really hope that you continue to consider Duquesne. And yeah, Augustine, well, don't share that with everyone on the chat. Just talk to us personally and we'll get back to you, okay? Because that's your personal information. But in any case, let us help you through this process. And we hope that we wish you the best of luck as you pursue this opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in today. And again, please reach out to us via email. We're happy to help with any questions that we weren't able to answer in this webinar or your personal questions. So look forward to the next webinar. We will update you on that information, and please finish your applications. We look forward to welcoming you to Duquesne. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.